Howdy everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at how to make a stop motion video. We're going to go over how to plan it, record it, and then fit it all nicely together in the video module of Zoner Photo Studio X. But what is stop motion animation? Stop motion is one of the oldest animation techniques, and we already know from our video on frames per second settings that a video is actually just a bunch of images in rapid succession. Stop motion works the exact same way. The only difference is that each frame is not made with motion, but rather by manipulating the objects to create smooth motion when combined together. Now before you start shooting, it's a good idea to plan how many images you're going to actually need. To figure this out, we need to decide on how many frames per second we want our animation to have. Let's say we want 25 frames per second, and if that's what we want, then we're gonna want a 10-second animation, which is made up of 250 images. But for animation, such a high frame rate is actually not needed. Of course, we could if we wanted it to make it look really smooth, which in the end would produce a better result, but it's not something that we actually need to do. Older cartoons were made at 18 frames per second, and that's why a frame rate between 15 and 20 FPS is more than enough for our purposes. Now for this project, I'm gonna choose 15 FPS. That's because it takes less photos to make what we want, and secondly, because Zoner Photo Studio X is at its default as set up at 15 FPS. Unfortunately, you can't create an animation with a different frame rate than what you have set in the video project settings. And this is because the photos can only be displayed for the duration of the entire frame, and you can't break the frame down into smaller segments. And we can start shooting. Well, not yet. We still have to figure out what equipment we're going to need to make this project look good and to actually accomplish our goals. So you're going to need a camera, a tripod, and some type of object. Now it's a good idea to use a remote shutter or an app connected to your camera so that you don't have to move the camera while taking pictures. Shooting stop motion animation works best with artificial light, and this is because daylight can change based on the weather. This could cause issues, and the exposure would cause breathing during the animation. For the same reasons, it's also a good idea to shoot stop motion in manual mode, including manual white balance and manual focus. Autofocus can be inaccurate and it won't look good. We also recommend a higher f number for the greatest depth of field. It'll be a lot easier to focus, and if your subjects are at different distances from the lens, they won't be as blurry. And in short, you want to have complete control over all of your camera settings. Now, and if you don't know how to set up exposure in manual mode, here's a video that we've done about it before, and also there's going to be a link in the description. Now, we highly recommend shooting stop motion in JPEG. You're going to need a lot of photos, and JPEGs are going to take up less space and are easier for your computer and Zoner Photo Studio to work with. Now, if you want to have complete control of your photos, you can shoot in RAW, but you just have to edit all the images in the exact same way, or use both JPEG and RAW. Then if something goes wrong, you can replace the JPEG with edited RAWs. Now that we have everything we need, we can get started. Now is the easy part. Just move the objects around, and each time you do, take a picture. Remember, the smoother you want the object to move, the less difference of spacing is going to be required between each shot. If you quickly move them from the last shot to the next shot, you're going to have a giant leap in where the object is, and it's not going to look smooth. So it's something to really pay attention to. You may need to hold the object in place or in the air, and you can use several things to help, like chewing gum, string, wires, and even your own hands. And all these can be edited out in Zoner Photo Studio X after adding them to the video. And once we're done shooting, we can start editing. Add the images to a folder in the catalog with preloading to make working with files as smooth as possible. And after you have the images in the right folder, open the video module and create a new project. Set up the resolution to full HD and the frame rate to 15 FPS, as we already mentioned earlier. Once everything is set up, make sure you're in the right folder in the film strip below. Once you have all your images ready, click Add All Files, or select the ones you want to add and then click Add Selected Files. Now, a window is going to open asking us how these images should be added. Now, there's two options. You can either add them as separate pictures or as a time lapse. The difference here is that with separate pictures, you can select the duration each image is displayed, and you also have control over each image. You can also add transitions or basic effects. However, I don't recommend this function for stop motion animation. Now, if you add the images as a time lapse, the entire animation is going to be added and acts as one file on the timeline. I'm going to select add as time lapse and set how many frames I want for each image, which is 1. These settings should be the same for each stop motion animation that you do. Now we're almost done, and if everything looks good, then we're ready to go. If you still want to edit each image, then go to the module you need and edit that image. The saved adjustments will show right up in the animation. If you want to adjust the duration of a certain image, click Split Time-Lapse in the right panel, and the time-lapse is going to be split into separate frames, and you can stretch or shorten each frame or add a transition. Be careful with this step though. Once you split the time-lapse, it can't be put back together. You have to work with separate frames rather than a single file that acts like a video. Once your animation is finished, click Export Project, select the folder and leave the default settings, and then click Export. And we're all done, and here is how it turned out. Now that's how you make stop motion animation, and now you can get creative and start making little videos almost like old Walt Disney used to make himself. Hope you guys liked this video. It gave you some new inspirations of things you can do with Zoner Photo Studio X. Give us a thumbs up, let us know what you think below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Till then, take care.